Hi, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Come with me as I wander the country in search of valuable vintage, amazing antiques, and cool collectibles. We'll buy, sell, and trade at antique malls, shops, and shows, estate sales, flea markets, thrift stores, anywhere people go to find really interesting things that just aren't made anymore. So come on, let's go! Hey everybody, I'm George the Antique Nomad. Welcome to this month's bonus video, sponsored by my Level 2 members, and I appreciate so much the sponsorship. It lets us make these extra videos. The Level 2 members do get to see it first because they help fund it, but I'm very grateful for that because then I get to share all of this information with everybody eventually. If you are seeing this as a Level 2 member, you will be seeing these items going on eBay while you watch this video. The listings go live as you watch, and you can take a look and see what the interest is, follow the bids, see how things end up finally selling. There's also buy it nows on, I believe, every single piece in this particular video, so if you really like something, you get first choice. And if you're seeing this after the fact, if the items are still available and don't have any bids, then you can buy them now too. Otherwise, you're welcome to take a look, bid if you like, watch the market just to learn more. It's a fun way for us to all experiment a little bit, and I try to put 20 items that I think are interesting for various reasons. Sometimes they're interesting, expensive, or interesting for their type, or interesting for the qualities that they have, or they just have a good story. So sit back and relax and enjoy this, and I will go through these items and we'll talk a little about what makes them special. And where we're going to start is with this butterfly pin right here, which has a pair of matching earrings. I'll move a little closer so you can see better. These are by the Trifari company, and Trifari is a company that is still made today. That brand is still in business. It's part of Liz Claiborne now, and it's kind of a low-end brand these days, but when it first started, it was a high-end costume jewelry brand. Gustavo Trifari came to Ellis Island from Italy in 1910 at the peak of immigration, and he started designing jewelry and was very good at it. The early pieces are marked KTF. They are very hard to find and rather valuable. Then he started putting Trifari as the name on it. He had a designer come in by the name of Alfred Philippe around 1930, and he did a lot of things that looked like precious stones, but by the 60s, people were wanting things that were a little more fun and informal and very brightly colored. So they came out with these, which are called the Confetti Colors collection. And you can tell they're 1960s Trifari. I'm going to turn the pin around so you can see, because on the tail has the little tiny mark that says Trifari, and it has a crown and a copyright. It's hopefully focusing in for you right here on the back where the tail is. The crown mark was used in the 50s and 60s. The collectors who are serious about Trifari typically want things with the crown mark or earlier marks, and that is because the quality was probably a little better and the pieces were a little more special in that period. Interestingly, Trifari is very popular in Italy, even though the pieces were made in the United States. There is an understanding of the collection to the Italian heritage, and there are a lot of Trifari collectors in Italy. These pieces here are starting at $25. My thought is that they'll probably go between $65 and $85 for the set, because you typically just see the pin or just the earrings or some component and not all of it together. So I think that's a pretty set, and it's timely for summer because it's butterflies and pastels. So it's not some formal winter wear. It's actually something that you could enjoy right now. The next piece that I have to show you, I have a lot of things related to childhood. Maybe it's because it's summer vacation and we're not quite to back to school, but I seem to be finding childhood things all of a sudden, and I thought this was very cute. You will recognize this character with the huge ears as Dumbo the Clown, and the little blue mouse is Timothy the Mouse. Dumbo was a short and sweet cartoon by Disney standards. He defied everybody by coming out with full-length cartoons with Snow White in 1938. Everyone said he was crazy and it would bankrupt him, and it was a huge success. Bambi was a huge success. Then he came out with Fantasia, and Fantasia is a beautiful film, very focused on the animation, not so focused on children, and because of that, it was not a big success. He followed that up, or somehow concurrently anyway, made Pinocchio, and Pinocchio, as wonderful a movie as it is, was a complicated movie to make, and as a result, it lost money too. And so by the time Dumbo came along, he needed a hit. He needed it to be short, sweet, and to the point. They ended up using a whole lot of photostats for backgrounds so that they didn't have to do as much background drawing. There even ended up being a strike at Disney over it because he was using a lot of junior animators being led by senior animators, but he really needed to save money, and RKO, I believe, was the distributor. They wanted the film to be longer. It's only 64 minutes, and he said, nope, that'll cost another $500,000 and I don't have it. And the story is told, and it's a wonderful story, and there's a lot of people who really love it and collect Dumbo, and this is one of the things they look for. It's got the Walt Disney Productions mark on the bottom. It's very clean on the bottom, but you can see some crazing inside and some evidence of use. It is definitely original, but it's in just wonderful condition. These typically sell between $45 and $75, and I think that I've got it starting at the one and buy it now at the other. The important thing is that it says Walt Disney Productions. When you're looking for older Disney, that mark was from the 1940s to the 1980s, and then it just says Disney after that, and it's a different era as far as vintage at that point. Pink elephants, by the way, were something that were mentioned in both English and American lore, and the pink elephant and the blue mouse was something that people saw when they were having alcoholic hallucinations. Jack London refers to it in his 1913 book, John Barleycorn. There were certainly other references to that as early as the 1890s. So by the time Dumbo came along, they decided to have some fun with it, and Dumbo and Timothy Mouse drink water that has been spiked with champagne unwittingly, and they end up drunk, and they end up waking up in a tree. That's when they figure out that they got there because Dumbo can fly with his big ears. So it's a big turning point in the movie, and that was a joke on the pink elephants. Also the idea that his friend was a mouse, because of course there's that old saw about the elephant being afraid of the mouse. So it's just very sweet, and I have a friend in Florida who has that piece already because she's been collecting for years. She's got the cookie jar. I have that in stock myself right now, the one that has the turnaround head that faces both directions and has a slightly different pose, and there's just a lot of neat Dumbo stuff out there. Carrying on with the childhood theme, this piece I showed recently in a video when I got it. This is Hot Wheels, and it is the showcase plaque that hung on the wall for the custom shop. And it is a way to show off your Hot Wheels collection where you could hang it on the wall, and it's supposed to look like a shop. Now, this has never been off of this card, so it is original. It did seem to have tape or something, and somebody at some point tried to fill in a couple of the letters, it looks like, that maybe the tape took off from the original, but this has not been used. It still has its original packaging showing you how to use it, how to display on it, how to hang it on the wall. The great thing about Hot Wheels is, well, a couple of things made them very popular when they came out. First of all, they were only $1 a piece, and so that was inexpensive compared to the Matchbox and Corgis and Dinky Toys and die-cast cars coming from England. Secondly, they had really good wheels that went really fast because they mounted them on a wire. Now that meant that they bent easily and they were easy to smash and break, but it meant that they went a lot faster than the English ones, and kids liked fast. I'll tell you, I loved them when I was a kid. This one is from the first year of production. It says copyright 1968 on the bottom. And so that's significant because it is first year. It is not a reproduction. It is the original on the original package. Now, one of these that I have to say was probably in a little better condition as far as this one, even though it's new old stock, like I said, someone tried to fix where the tape had taken off some of the stuff. The other thing is it's got just a little wear on the high point because I think it was in a stack of these that was found in an old store. And so it's new old stock, but it's not absolutely 100% perfect. But that means someone should get a relative deal on this, because one of these that was mint even beyond this condition sold recently for $400. I was really surprised, but Hot Wheels are super hot right now. One of the things they did that was really clever is they sold them in grocery stores. And I remember when I was a kid, if you went to the grocery store and you were good, you got a little car to bring home. And that was a very clever idea, as opposed to just selling them in toy stores, because they got mom to drop $1 every time she took the kid to the store. At least about every other time. My mom was a little stingy about that, but I definitely had some really cool Hot Wheels when I was a kid. Now, the next thing I'd like to show is a different sort of item. This is a paperweight, and it is from 1999, and you think, well, that's not terribly old. You usually get older things. 1999 is almost not even vintage in my eyes. It's a little over 20 years. It's vintage in Etsy's eyes, but here's why this is legit as far as I'm concerned. It is a tiger, and if you look at the nameplate there, it says Exxon, Company USA, 1972 to 1999. There were a whole bunch of Standard Oil companies that were broken up in the Teddy Roosevelt administration, and a bunch of them started marketing together in their gas stations, the Standard of New Jersey group, as Humble Oil, Enco, Esso. And even though they came up with the very clever put a tiger in your tank, which is where the tiger came from, that was a 1960s and 70s era advertising message that they used, because it was supposed to be good gas that would make your car perform well. The truth of the matter was that they needed a national brand identity, and they just weren't getting that out of having these 3 or 4 different names. So they decided, instead of Esso, Enco, and Humble, that they were going to change it and make it Exxon. It's spelled with 2 X's because it turned out that there was I believe a governor, maybe the governor of Nebraska, if I remember right, had the last name Exxon, E-X-O-N, and they thought that would not be good, so we better spell it a little differently. So that's why the funny spelling. Well, in 1999, the federal government approved their merger with Mobil. And when Mobil and Exxon merged, that was the biggest merger in history at the time. Almost $75 billion was exchanged for that to happen. And that was the end of Exxon as an independent company. So that's why 1972 to 99, those were the years that Exxon was Exxon. And because of that, these were given out mainly to people who worked at, say, I think it's a reconstituted marble base, and it's some sort of a copper tone patina on white metal. But the last one of these I saw sell, and they don't come up very often because they were mainly just given to executives, and it was to remember something that was disappearing, so a lot of them didn't really have any interest or kept these things. So they turn up once in a while. This one turned up in Louisiana, which is oil country, so that makes sense. And the last one that I saw sell online went for about $95. So we will see how this does, but I think it's an interesting piece. And for someone who collects advertising or paperweights or Petroliana, it could be a winner for you. Now, what is next? Try to keep my order here. The next piece I want to show you is this very delicate little dolphin on a stand here. I always think of Kat from the Nurse Flipper channel because she gives dolphins out when people give her super chats. She has a dolphin that comes on the screen and makes noises, and that is your thank you for giving her those. She loves dolphins. But when you look in here, you notice how delicate it is. This is called lamp work, meaning that it's done using a torch and rods of glass as opposed to being a big hand-blown thing with a glory hole and a big firing kiln and all those sorts of things, or furnace, I should say. These were made by a company called Bimini Werkstatt, primarily. They started the style. And that was done in Vienna, Austria by a fellow named Fritz Lompel. He was a poet originally, And he published a book of poetry, and it didn't do well. And he literally made no money for an entire year and thought, I've got to do something else. And he went to a museum display, and he saw this wonderful art glass by an Austrian woman who did a lot of fantasy pieces. And he said, this is poetry in glass. I would like to do this. And so he got together with an industrial glass worker and started doing these designs, and they were a big success. He then had to flee during the Second World War to England, and he started another company that did molded glass. So these pieces that were made by Bimini Werkstatt, which means Bimini was a fictitious island. It actually is an island now off of the coast, Florida, and these days there is a Bimini, but at the time it was a fictitious island where wonderful things happened, and the Werkstatt meant workshop. So that's what he was going for, was we're going to do little pieces of glass that are fantasies. They did a lot of cocktail stems that have dancing women and things. Those are really neat. Now, some companies in Germany did similar work, and there isn't good scholarship to tell which is which. But this appears to be Bimini because all the other pieces I've seen, like the dancing women, have this exact foot. It's pressed on, and then the lamp work is done from there. So the foot has a very distinct look to it on the bottom, and also it feels almost like plastic. And that's part of why I wanted to show this, is because for those of you who go sourcing in the wild, this came from a thrift store. I've had it for a long time in my collection, and I've decided to let it go. But I originally got this at a Goodwill. And that was because somebody thought it wasn't old. They just thought it was some little novelty thing, and they didn't recognize the way it was made. So in reality, these should sell for somewhere around $45. So this is going to list right now. Now these are fun. I wanted to make this the next thing that I show. These are depression glass. Now Tiffin, which was an elegant glass company, made some of these, and I believe these are Tiffin because of the shape of the stem, but other companies made them too, and I don't want to say that's a firm attribution because I cannot absolutely guarantee that, but they're very nice quality. And what's fun is they're called watermelon glass for obvious reasons, because it is pink and green. Now sometimes just the foot is green, but in this case it's the whole stem, and it's the Depression era, so let's get the black light on here, and not surprisingly, I won't even have to turn the lights off with these. Look at the way that glows on the bottom. It's just nuclear. I love it. I think it's really cool. And if you were having a blacklight party, well, this would be really great because you could see enough of the glass to not break it and actually use it. Let me hold these up one at a time so you can see how that just pops out there. And here's the other one. These would have originally been water glasses. Now, Americans are bigger than they used to be back in the times of yore. And because of that, what were water glasses in the Depression are basically what people consider to be wine glasses now. And that's why I'm presenting these as a pair, is I figured that they could be a toasting pair, clink very lightly so you don't chip the glass. But I thought they were quite lovely, and I just love the fact that they have the uranium in them to make the stems glow in this manner. And they're just fun as can be. I've always liked watermelon glass, and it was neat to find some pieces that were inexpensive enough to bring to you. Now there is nothing like band games for great fun, and the next two items I have are band games. And here's the first one. These are Jarts. Yes, this is the original. Jarts were invented by a dentist in New Jersey, of all things, because he thought horseshoes were kind of staid and boring, and wouldn't it be neat if you had something that you could throw in the air and it would go higher and come down and look really modern. And he came up with this right about the time that the space race is happening, around 1960, and it seemed to go over well. Now, it says right on it, toss like horseshoes, they stand up. Warning, not a toy for children. It's very clear that this is supposed to be used by the family with everybody there and mom and dad supervising. Well, I have to say, everybody can be sort of callous about other people's experiences until you meet someone who's had one. I had a set of these out at a show recently that sold, and a guy came up and told me about how his mother has a scar on her foot to this day because one of the kids threw it and it sort of flipped backwards and attacked her in her lawn chair, and she wasn't able to get out of the way of it. So apparently people really did get injured by these. So, you know, use with a modicum of common sense. Don't throw it up in the air and try to catch it. Don't throw it at your brother and sister. But in any event, the important thing with this is the box is very clean and everything in it is intact, and I'll show you that. These went from very popular to being listed as something not legal to sell in toy stores after 1969 when the Toy Safety Act came about. And by 1988 they were banned entirely from sale because there continued to be knockoffs because it was a great game. This has the box in very nice condition. It's got the rings. The rings have the red plugs on them so that they will hook together. That's very important. And it has all the darts, and the darts are in good condition. That is all very important to the value of these because the value of these is rather high now. The generation that grew up with these and remembers these wants their toys back because mom threw them all away or donated them, and so they would like to have these back to the tune of as much as $150 to $250 for a set nowadays. And we still have some of summer left. So I'm going to put this out there and we will see if someone needs a set or a matching scar on their other foot. And we will try to turn this off once and for all. There we go. While we're on the subject of banned games, here are clacker balls, also known as clankers, also known as kerbangers in some places. And the trick with these, and I'm not very good at them, was you were supposed to be able to start rocking them back and forth in a way where they would clack together, and when you got really good at it, you could spin them over your head and do all sorts of crazy things, and sometimes people would accidentally let go and bam, get popped in the eye, or bash their brother or sister in the head. And so it was really bad at first because in 1968 when they came out, they made them of tempered glass, and they would break and then you'd have little shards of tempered glass flying in your face. So that wasn't too good. So then they switched to the plastic balls figuring, well, that's okay, but they still were really hard and could whomp you pretty good. And so because of that, by 1971, these were made of acrylic, and by the late 70s, they were off the market and considered dangerous. Now, in 2017 or so, they started selling something very similar in Egypt, and they ended up being banned because people started referring to them as a part of the president of Egypt's anatomy. We'll just leave it at that, and he did not like that, so he had all of the toy sellers arrested who were selling these, and that was the end of them. So they just can't seem to get a break in the marketplace, but they are legal to sell to adults on eBay, and that's where we're going to put them. I think they're really cool. They make great noise. They should sell for somewhere between about $35 and $50 the set, and we'll see how these do. Now our next pieces are a pair of earrings, and they're rather small. They're actually substantial enough on the ears, but they're ear clips, so I'm going to bring them up where you can see them a little better. These are copper, and they are comedy and tragedy. This is marked Renoir. Renoir and Matisse, I've had pieces on by them before because I really like this stuff and I look for it. And those are, yes, I believe I've said this before, but for those of you who haven't seen that video, well, these are the same people who ended up, after making jewelry, started a company called Jarts and make the big wall art that is so popular and collectible from the 70s now. But in the 50s and 60s, they were making jewelry. These have good, strong clips. That's always something to look for. If you're buying clip earrings, make sure that they seem to snap pretty well because they've got to be able to stay on someone's ears. These will. They have the signature on the back. It's rather small. I hope I have it up right. Yes. There we go. Let's see if that comes in. There's the Renoir signature. And a lot of people, there are people who prefer clip earrings. You can always pad them if you wish. And so even if you have pierced, you can still wear clips. So they're universal that way. I think they're really fun. I like the comedy and tragedy. I believe there was a pin that went with this set. A lot of their sets also had the necklace and the bracelet. I'm not sure that this set did. I haven't seen those pieces out there. But these are going to start at $14.99. I think they're worth about double that, and we shall see how they do. I figured that we've got theater starting to open up again, so this is a good time to be putting out things that relate to theater arts. I wanted to show this because I had a viewer recently say, oh, I'm afraid to buy Roseville because I can't tell the new from the old. And I wanted to show this piece because this is one of the middle period floral pieces, but this is a hard to find pattern called Moss. And look how nice the variegation on the glaze is and the painting. It's a hard pattern to find. It wasn't made for so long. They had a designer named Frank Farrell, and he was the one who did these Art Deco shapes and then the floral designs on top. So it had this interesting combination of naturalistic and Art Nouveau influence, but on very Art Deco shapes. He came to Roseville in 1917. They did most of these in the late 20s and through the 30s. Now Roseville is very well marked generally. See in this period. It generally didn't have paper labels, or it might have optionally, but it has the nice Roseville in script. Notice the tan color of the clay. The Chinese reproductions tend to be whitish in color. The Chinese have not reproduced this. They tend to reproduce the really common patterns like magnolia and peony for some reason, and they're very sloppy, whereas this, if you look how careful the glazing is. All those different colors. This would have been a multi-step process. It would have been difficult to do. Really, the Depression era would have been the only time you would have seen something this complex in production pottery because labor was inexpensive, so they could do these kinds of things. Roseville's also nice because it's very well marked. The shape number is 239, the small jardiniere with this particular handle, and it's 4 inches tall. And so Roseville is very easy to identify from this period. And if you saw a Chinese fake, you would not be fooled. So I wanted to show that partly because of those characteristics and partly because it's just a really beautiful piece in a pattern you don't see very often. And that is why this little piece, which in an ordinary Roseville pattern might sell for $45, is likely to sell closer to $100 because moss is a very desirable pattern. So I'm happy to put this out and let someone have it and see what they think of it. Hey everyone, I just wanted to take a quick break and thank you for watching this video. If you're enjoying it, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. Also, please do subscribe because then you can click that bell to be notified of future videos. We have membership packages. There's a couple of different levels. We appreciate the support of our super fans who help us do extra bonus content. You can check that out by hitting the join button below or clicking the link in the description. And lastly, we want to ask you to check out our new channel, the Antique Nomad Live. That's live with an exclamation point, where we're doing additional content of a live nature, hauls, sales, bonus stuff. We'll have a lot of fun there too. So check us out here on the Antique Nomad and also on the Antique Nomad Live. Now let's get back to this video. And while we're on 1930s ceramics, I got a big collection of these and I thought I would pick one and put it out just because they're so sweet and it was fun to get a whole bunch at the same time. I got probably 8 or 10 of these little Czech bird wall pockets. And when I say Czech, it's because they are marked, usually with an ink stamp, sometimes faint and hard to read, but this one's pretty good, saying made in Czechoslovakia. And they are painted with that airbrush style that was popular in the time. They have various shades. This one has a combination of bright colors and pastels. A lot of times they are one or the other. They did a lot of birds that were realistic and then some that were just sort of fantasies, but you'll see parrots, you'll see owls, so the owl collectors like these. And this one is nice because it has a very late 30s, early 40s motif here that was very popular, and that is the bow knot. Bow knots were a big thing in late 1930s decorating because they were big and showy, and also because as the world was approaching wartime, fashion tends to become softer and frillier when times are difficult. And we get into modern and clean-cut design more when times are good. It just seems to be a habit of the fashion industry to follow those trends. And so this one is very indicative of its era. This is late 1930s. By 1940, Hitler had invaded. Actually, 1938, he got the main part with the manufacturing because of the deal that was brokered between he and some of the other world powers. And they thought it would stop the war and stop aggression, and it didn't. It just gave him a bunch more manufacturing capacity. So we didn't get these after that time. So they really herald to a 1930s era. They were inexpensive new. They are not terribly expensive to collect now. This will probably sell around $25. Next, I have this wonderful strawberry basket purse. It is not Labor Day yet, so white is still okay. Now, I realize that for most people, they don't follow those conventions, and white's okay all the time. But I like this little piece because it would be fun as a lunchbox. It would be fun to have in a kitchen to hold things. The strawberry motif is a little different than what this company did primarily because this is by Caro Nan. I'm going to show you on the top is another strawberry. And on the inside, their baskets say, Made in USA by Caro Nan. And the reason they say that is because this company was started when a woman named Carolyn McDaniel in Jackson, Mississippi was sent a woven purse that had paintings of buildings in the DC area by her parents who were on vacation there. And she thought it was really neat, but wouldn't it be great if they did it on a woven basket? And her friend, Nancy Steele, that's the Caro Nan. So Carolyn and Nancy started this company about 1965. And at first they were just hand painting things for themselves and carrying them around town. And people would say, wow, that's really neat. Where'd you get it? Oh, well, we made it. Oh, would you make me one? So they started making a handful, and they would sit around at night and paint them, and they usually had little buildings on them and just little scenes. Well, they really caught on, and then a company out of Dallas, a salesman, saw it and said, our company would like to order a bunch of these. Could you make 24 of them? Well, they were just sort of doing this freehand by themselves, so next thing you know, they had to source the woven baskets. They tried to get companies in Vermont to make them, but they were all having to be made very painstakingly by hand, so they ended up getting other sources, and they finally figured out how to get a consistent basket. They started painting the buildings on them, and they would put the names of a store that wanted to sell them and other attractions in the town. It became quite a fad. At the peak, they made 5,000 of these in 1 month. Then the peak started to wear off, so they started doing other designs. And this is from the early to mid 70s when strawberry designs were very popular. And this was a way to extend the line. And I think it's really, really cute. I don't see this out there very often online. And I would expect this to sell anywhere from $30 to $45. I'm going to start it at $15. So we will have some fun and see where this goes. But I just think this one's very sweet. And yes, you could use it as a purse. And the important thing to look at with these also, because a lot of them were used, is what shape is the liner in. And in this case, it's very clean. Now, the next piece I'd like to show is our third and final piece of jewelry for the evening. And it's got all the hallmarks that I wanted to show you that make this a Juliana pin. Now, Juliana was a trade name of DeLiza and Elster, and they only used the Juliana name in 1967 to 68, but lots of their pins came out before and after that, and they all seem to be called Juliana. There are certain things that you need to look for, because if they had any label at all, it would have been a paper tag that was usually ripped off and thrown away originally. So there are several things that all added up together tell us this is a DeLiza and Elster. First of all, these Navette stones do not have foil on the back like a lot of rhinestones do, so the color shows through more. It's not so much reflective, it's more a pure color. Secondly, rhinestones on a wire, this wire construction. Thirdly, the rivet in the middle, or as they called them, I believe they referred to them as, eyelets. We would refer to it generally as a rivet. Another thing to look for, and this one doesn't have a lot of areas that are flat to show this. Let's get some focus here. Come on, baby. There we go. Right there, see where it is puddled up a little bit. Puddling is definitely something you see on Juliana pieces. And also it is dimensional, and it uses a lot of different stones. See how it actually stacks? So it's not just a flat surface at all, and they use a lot of different sizes of stones and different shapes of stones. And all of those things add up to this being Juliana. This particular piece is going to start at $29.99. These typically sell in the $45 to $50 range these days. There was a time about 10 years ago when they were selling for about $65 just for the pins. It is very popular and very showy, and the only reason the prices have come down a little bit is so much went into collections that it's hard to make a set. So if you buy this, it might be a while before you get matching earrings, necklace, bracelet. So this next item I thought was really fun. I seem to be on a toys and games kick, but I like this because, of course, last year we had the movie The Queen's Gambit about chess and chess players, and that really spurred a lot of interest in chess to the point where people started making new versions of what this is. This is a seldom seen set from the 1970s when Bobby Fischer beat the Russian in 1972, and it was televised. That created a big spur of interest in chess, and lots of novelty sets came out. Well, this movie has done the same, and there is a new novelty set that is made out of nothing but nuts and bolts and parts. Well, that seems very clever, but this came out in the mid-1970s, and look, it's made of nuts and bolts and parts. So everything old is new again, but this was actually made in the United States in the early to mid-70s. And it's very clever. If you take a look at the way they're made, they use wing nuts and little washers and all sorts of things to distinguish the pawns from the larger pieces. The condition is good overall on this. It hasn't been played much. It's not missing any. It doesn't have a lot of corrosion or anything. It does not have a board because it didn't come with one. Neither do the new ones. You have to have your own board for these. But I just thought it was something different. I haven't seen a lot of these sell online. The new ones are selling for about $90 online, and that's drop ship from Asia where they're being made. But this one, made in America in the 1970s, is likely to sell for less than that, surprisingly enough, unless somebody catches on to the fact that, hey, it's cool and it's older and it's the same thing that costs $90 now. So I'm curious to see where the market will go on this. Next up is this little piece. I just got it recently. It was in one of my videos when I picked it up, and I didn't voice over that part, and it was raining really hard and you couldn't hear my voice, so I didn't say anything about it. So I guess now's my chance. This is a 1940s era. This particular one has a date stamp on the back that corresponds to about 1944. This is it's marked OP Company, Syracuse, China. Syracuse, China was the brand name for the Onondaga Pottery Company, and so that's why it has both of those marks. If you look at it, it's a nice airbrush. This is restaurant ware. That's what they were mainly known for, although they did do in the Second World War and up until the late 60s, early 70s, they did do fine china for home use as well. But this is airbrush, this is restaurant ware, and that is supposed to represent a DC-3 flying over a major city. The major city is most likely New York, because where these were used the most was at LaGuardia Airport. And you see them occasionally. They are very collectible. They did larger pieces as well, bigger plates, little plates. So there is an entire set, basic cafe-ware set that you can assemble of these. And I just think it's great because of that story, and also just because the colors are fun and the airbrushing is fun, and it's definitely evocative of an era. I am starting this particular one somewhere around $24.99. I suspect that it's worth $40 to $45 in the berry bowl size. And while we're on the subject of airplanes and things that you may have seen me pick up in videos this summer, I am putting the first of what I believe ended up being 4 flight manuals that I found in a box at the 400-mile yard sale this year in Kentucky. This is a flight manual for Eastern Airlines, and when we say flight manual, it is essentially an owner's manual for an airplane, except because it's an airplane, the first section with the red is emergency procedures, and unfortunately with this airplane, they really needed to know how to get to the emergency procedures because this airplane was a Lockheed Electra 188. And you can see that on the spine here. This is a very complete volume. It even has a bunch of supplemental additions in the front. That's why I did not put them in the binder. Now this was not stored well, so the binder, the rings are rusty, and the backing is rusty, but it's all there, it's intact, and it's not loose, and it's got all its pages, and we got most of the musty smell out. It wasn't stored very well. We got most of the musty smell out. It wasn't stored very well, so it's got a little of that old funky paper smell, but it is overall in good shape, and the fact that it exists is pretty remarkable. They only made about 150 of the Electra L-188s because it was a propeller plane. It was a 4-engine turboprop. Well, those engines put a lot of torque on the wings, and they had 2 or 3 fatal crashes almost right away, which was pretty serious because these airplanes held 100 or 150 people. And so they grounded the fleet. It turned out that there was some sort of a situation where something would create some sort of a harmonic vibration or something that would cause another part to fail, and then the engines would fall off, and then the wings would fall off. Pretty bad design. So they had to take all of them back to Lockheed, fix them all, and put them back in service. There are 2 that are still flying today, and apparently they did fix all the problems, but the reputation was ruined. And also, this came out in 1957, and by then we're starting to have Boeing jets everywhere, and the jet was faster. This could go 360 with propellers, but a jet could go 100 miles an hour faster. And so the Electra ended up being pretty short-lived. They were only made 4 years. The pages in this manual, the supplemental pages, appear to be 1960s. Eastern probably flew them until about 1968 or 9. So these are hard to find. The prices I've seen on other flight manuals that were for more modern planes run by Eastern, the prices, sale prices, seem to be around 100. The selling prices for some of these more obscure earlier planes can be as much as $4 to $450. So I'm very curious to see how this does and whether somebody out there catches on to the fact that this is a pretty scarce piece. Now, if you were flying in that plane, unfortunately, you might need a fire truck. And here one is now. This is a FisherPrice fire truck. It is the Winky Blinky fire truck. And it is made of wood, and that's a good thing because older FisherPrice toys were made of wood. And that is something that people prize. And the other thing that's important about it is it has all its parts. None of the paper covering is ripped apart, and it's in pretty good overall shape. Now, these were made from 1954 to 59, and you can tell that they're in a transition period because the body is wood, but you're starting to see the introduction of plastic in FisherPrice toys. By the 1960s, they were using all plastic, so the earlier wooden pieces are the more desirable ones. They first started making toys in 1930. It was a group of 4 people, the Fishers, the Prices, and a woman named Irene Steller, I think, who had run a toy store, so she knew about distributing. And between all of them, they came up with this idea that they should make toys geared more for preschool and child development as opposed to just, oh, it's fun to play with for older children. And that was something people hadn't really thought about before, and it was very smart. The important thing is that it's pretty much completely intact. The only thing missing is a little red plastic ring that used to be on the pull cord, but it's got the original pull cord, the bell rings, these guys pop up and down when the wheels turn. So it's got everything it's supposed to have, and the condition is good. And that makes it something that is desirable in the marketplace. So we're going to put that out and see how it does. I think we're starting at around $30, and we're going to go from there and see what the market thinks of that. They typically sell in a $40 to $50 range. The other thing that's important is the Google Eyes work. So as it goes down the road, looky there. Now, the next item that I'm going to show you is not going to be the biggest joy to ship, but it is a good piece by an interesting artist who people are just starting to discover. He's an American artist named Wayne Howell, and he animated using clowns. And he did it in a way that was somewhat like Mad Magazine. It was cartoonish and animated, but very well drawn and very thorough. And I'm going to show you this print because it also, like Mad Magazine, was a point of satire. So there's Wayne Howell's signature in the bottom there. It's a signed and numbered edition piece, but let's see who else we have here. This is a paddy wagon with a very sad clown being dragged off by other clowns, and then who's driving up there? Well, on the horse, you have John Wayne, and on top, the driver is Richard Nixon, and he is surrounded by Spiro Agnew, Henry Kissinger, and other people who were high up in the administration. This is early 1970s. This is shortly before Watergate. Of course, this artist, because he did these sorts of illustrations, went on to do some Watergate-related political art as well, featuring this same style of motif. So I realize that for a lot of people, this might not be something you'd want to have in your house, but for someone who's a political memorabilia collector, it's a pretty significant piece, and they do sell for around $100 to $150 each. The shipping on this will be a little bit tough, but it can be done. It's easy enough to ship pictures if you're careful and you use the right material. You can get a picture even in the glass across country without a lot of trouble. I've sent pictures all the way from Florida to Seattle and Seattle to Kentucky, and I just sent one to Canada, so it can be done, and we will do it with this if the price is right. There is not a lot of scholarship on Wayne Howell himself. They know that he's American and that he was producing, they think, somewhere in the Midwest at the time, but there isn't a whole lot of information on him as a person. So if somebody out there collects or knows something about that, it would be great to get a comment and to have a little bit better information about this person, because that's something that really should be shared with the art world and the political science world as well, because he did a lot of things in that vein. And also, any of you, if you would please leave comments and ask any questions or let us know what you like to see here. Merchandise comes when it comes, and because I'm a generalist, I never know what I'm going to see next. That's part of the fun of this, but if I can tailor something towards your particular taste that I find, I'm always happy to do that too. So the next piece I'd like to show you is this very striking fish tray. It is porcelain, it is good quality, it's well painted, it's hand painted, but there are certain things about it that distinguish this, which is just barely in the realm of vintage from its earlier forebears, which are older and more collectible. However, this line is collectible now too. This is Dansk, and this is the arabesque pattern. It's all hand painted, it was all blue and white. They did duck figural jars and figures, and they did the fish trays, but most of this is a dinner and tableware line that have normal dinner and tableware shapes. So the fish is a little different. I'm going to show you the back so that you can see the Made in Philippines mark. They didn't start making in the Philippines until the 1980s. Before that, Dansk was made primarily in France and Denmark, and the French and Danish pieces are typically the more collectible marks in Dansk, but the arabesque line has been discontinued for a while, and it does have a following, and so that's why I decided to put this out there. And besides, I think it's a really neat looking piece. Dansk was founded by a couple in the 1950s, and they went from their home in New York to Europe in order to try to find someone to make European products for an American audience. And they knew that Danish modern was starting to really take off in furniture, and they thought, well, let's go to Denmark to what was then called the Arts and Crafts Museum and see what's there. And they saw a set of teak and stainless cutlery that they really liked by a local artist named Jens Kvistgaard. And they found out how to reach him. They approached him, and he said, oh, I don't think that could be made as a production thing. I think it all has to be hand forged. And they said, no, we think we can do it. And they got a company to help them figure out how to make it a production item. And he was so impressed that he ended up going to work and became their designer for the next, I think, 30 years or so. So he would have been designing up to or almost up to the time that this line was made. They did very well for a very long time, and their name was synonymous with Danish design in American housewares. For quite a while, they had a large set of factory-owned stores, and I always really liked their work, I have to admit. I like modernism and I like Danish, and in this case, I like this happy fish. So we're going to put him up for $19.99, and I think he'll probably sell for about $10 or $15 more than that, but we'll see. And that brings us to our final item of the evening, and this one is something I just personally really like and am excited to show you. So bear with me one moment while I get it, because it's just too big to put here. In fact, it's so big I'm not sure really how to show you, but let's try. Okay, I'm going to have to show this from a distance because it's so big, but there it is. It is a double chenille peacock. So it's made of chenille, which is French for caterpillar, and it is just a wonderful piece. It's so big that I didn't really have a way to show you. This one is probably a queen size, which is unusual and very helpful. I will put measurements in the description so that we'll know exactly what the size is. Even the smaller ones are fun to use as toppers on beds, but this one's in really great condition, and what great colors. These were made in the Dalton, Georgia area primarily, where a lot of the rug makers are today, so it's always been a textile area. And a lot of these were sold to tourists going to Florida before the interstates, just like the Florida Highwaymen paintings. They would put these out along the roadsides and sell them to tourists headed to or from Florida. And the double peacock is probably the most desirable design there is in chenille. The condition is really good on this. I don't see any stains or holes. And the nice thing is it's fitted at the corners, so it will actually stay on the bed pretty well, which is nice. They're not all done like that. There's some little peacocks up at the top that are going to be hard to see. I had to drape this where I could to show you, but it's just a beautiful piece. These sell readily between $150 and $250 these days. And I got a big collection of them. I think I have 3 or 4, but this was one of the nicer, and I thought I would put it up here for you to all enjoy and for me to see how it will do online, because I've already sold one at a show and it did very well, and I suspect that we'll have similar results in computer land. We shall see. Well, that is our midsummer edition of the bonus video, and all these things are on eBay now. If you watch this and it just came out, they just listed. If you're seeing this afterwards, take a look. They might still be out there. You can follow along. You can see what the market thinks of these things and how they're doing. It's always fun for me to experiment this way. I do these things at auctions, so we take our chances and see how it goes. But I figure it's a good way for you to get a feel for what the current market for some of the more interesting and oddball and unusual things in a bunch of different categories are doing. I am the Antique Nomad on eBay. I am the antiquenomad.com on my website, and I am the Antique Nomad on YouTube. I am also the Antique Nomad Live on YouTube. That's our new channel. So if you haven't seen that, check it out, because we are starting to do some more live content and having fun with that. We just got to 1,000 subscribers, so we'll be able to do remotes with better quality video. We tried one the other day and it was pretty herky-jerky, but it was a lot of fun. So in any event, we just love bringing all this stuff to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to my Level 2 members for making this possible. And have fun seeing how it does. I'm going to as well. In the meantime, I'll be out scouting more items for next month's bonus video, and bye for now. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining me again in the fun and fascinating antique community, here where online meets the real world. Please click the subscribe button below, click the bell to be notified when new videos upload, leave a comment below, and hit thumbs up to like this video. Links to our online social media daily posts and our items for sale are in the description. This is George at the Antique Nomad. Bye for now.